Good evening and welcome to our ordinary meeting of Council on the 22nd of May 2023. Acknowledgement of country. Lithgow City Council acknowledges the Wiradjuri elders past and present of the Wiradjuri Nation, the original custodians of the land on which the Lithgow's communities reside. The Council also extends our respects to our neighbouring nations. I'd like to inform all those in attendance at this meeting that the meeting is being webcast and that those in attendance should refrain from making any defamatory statements concerning any person, councillor or employee, and refrain from discussing those matters subject to closed council proceedings as indicated in clause 14.1 of the Code of Meeting Practice. All councillors are here tonight. No apologies. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest this evening? Confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council held the 24th of April. Could I have somebody move these be accepted? Thank you.
I'll move.
Councillor O'Connor. Seconded Councillor Bryce. All those in favour say aye. Thank you. Commemorations and announcements. I would like to make an announcement referring to Margaret Hickey. She sadly passed away last week. She's been a member of many organisations in Lithgow and has been, I guess, the one person that has done possibly more time volunteering than the average person in our local government area. Margaret was well loved. She's in a lot of committees and she'll be very deeply missed. I'm also going to depart from the usual announcements this evening and wish on behalf of the council staff and the councillors very best wishes for Deanna Goodsell, who resigned last week. We wish Deanna all the best in her future career, and she was an enormous assistance to council in terms of being an active councillor. So on behalf of all the councillors, we wish her well. Public forum this
Mayor,
evening.
if I may, I have just wanted to make a mention
certainly.
of something, if I could, please. I too wish Deanna all the best, and she was a good councillor in the fact that we didn't always agree, but at least I knew where she was coming from, and I think that's important. I just wanted to mention the Catholic ball on Friday night, and I wanted to give thanks to Mr. Edgecombe. Thank you to you and your staff. The heating was turned on and we didn't freeze to death on Friday night. Yeah, well, we were, but I did get a call from the ball committee who did state that it was pretty cool there on the Thursday, but by the Friday you had done what you needed to do. So thank you to you and your staff. We didn't freeze. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. And yes, I would like to reflect to Mr. Good. I'm not usually calling him Mr. Good. To Edgecombe, Mr. Edgecombe. Sorry. The ball committee were very, very pleased with the work that was done at the 11th hour to have the ball a success. And congratulations to the council staff involved with Lithgow. It was an outstanding success as well. Public forum this evening. Any person registered to speak?
Nathan, can I just also thank Councillor Goodsell as well?
Yes, certainly.
Councillor Goodsell ran on my ticket.
Yes.
And she was a very good councillor.
Yes.
Right from word go. She threw her heart and soul into learning how to become a very good councillor, and she did that. She put a lot of time and effort into coming up here to understand all of the workings and the ins and outs of council, and she had definitely the community at heart when she was speaking, and she researched everything. All I can say is, I'm going to miss her here at council, and I think the community will miss her advocating on their behalf.
Thank you, Councillor Goodwin.
I'd just like
Councillor Marnie.
say a couple of words. Like a number of the councillors, I'm very sorry that Deanna won't be part of the council for the remainder of the term. Deanna's a person who clearly was driven by a very strong set of personal values. She was very much about representing the community on the big things as well as the little things. If it was rubbish out of Lake Wallace over an Easter long weekend, she was there presenting attention to that matter and getting it resolved, or it's the big strategic stuff, which I know she put a tremendous amount of work in. And the thing for community members, they don't always see the background work that goes on in committees and the hard work that goes on. And I know Deanna spent a lot of time making herself very aware and across the issues that she had in front of her. Like Councillor Coleman, I didn't agree on a few issues, but I could always understand Deanna's decision-making pathway, and in my mind, we need more Deannas than less of them, and one less is a big loss for our council. So, you know, I thank Deanna for her work.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Public forum. Any person registered to speak during public forum on matters included in the business paper and registered via the council website prior to 12 noon on the day of the meeting will have the opportunity to speak. There will only be 2 speakers for and against on each matter on the business paper. Public forum will be allocated half an hour in total time, with each speaker having 3 minutes to speak. Speaker not registered for public forum will have an opportunity to speak on matters on the business paper if time permits. We do have 2 gentlemen on the list this evening. Justin Kermadis from Energy Australia. Would you like to come forward, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors, for having me this evening. My name is Justin Komadius. I'm the Development Director for the proposed Mount Piper Battery Energy Storage Project. I'm here to talk about today our application for development consent in relation to the site subsurface investigation program that we're proposing for the project. Energy Australia is investigating the development of a battery energy storage project at its Mount Piper site with a capacity of up to 500 megawatts and a duration of 4 hours. The subsurface investigation is a key part of our planning process. The proposed subsurface activities will take place entirely within Energy Australia's land at Mount Piper. The proposed site is located within the Lithgow LGA SP2 infrastructure electricity generating works zone, is immediately south of the Mount Piper Power Station on land owned by Energy Australia, is next to the Mount Piper substation, is accessible by an existing road from the power station, was previously used as a construction compound and laydown area during the construction of the power station, is not visible from public roads and approximately 2 kilometres away from the closest residence, was largely levelled with fill prior to it being used as a laydown area, and was largely cleared at the time the power station was built. The proposed subsurface site investigation program has been designed to assess the subsurface geological conditions, the in situ geological, geotechnical, hydrogeological characteristics of the area, assess potential contaminants of concern, and identify any mine voids. The activities proposed to carry out the work include clearing existing shrubs and understory vegetation to establish approximately 1.7 kilometres in total of a vehicle track to enable access to the proposed drilling areas within that site, drilling approximately 62 boreholes of varying depths, of which approximately 5 would be converted to groundwater monitoring, excavation of approximate 9 test pits, excavation of approximately 6 shallow test pits, geophysical investigations, and then remediation of the site limited to those boreholes. Much of the site comprises non-native vegetation or cleared land associated with current infrastructure, and that vegetation provides minimal to nil ecological value. In terms of the clearing, minor clearing of native vegetation will be limited to shrubs and understories, approximately 0.38 hectares in total. As such, given the heavily disturbed nature of the site, its proximity to the power station and the substation, its prior use as a laydown area, its distance from nearby residents, the limited vegetation on the site, the fact that an access roadway exists through the middle of the site, we hope you agree that the application is relatively straightforward, and we request your support in this application so that we can progress the development. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. The second speaker tonight is Mike DeFink. Would you like to come forward, please, Mike?
Good evening, Mayor and Councillors. My name is Mike DeVink. I am the Energy Australia Project Director responsible for the proposed Lake Lyell Pumped Hydro Project. I welcome this opportunity to present in support of our application to modify our original approved development application to conduct further drilling for groundwater monitoring bores and geotechnical investigations within our proposed project site. We are requesting a modification to our consented development application to enable further investigations into the technical and commercial feasibility of this site. We have recently completed the initial approved program of works, creating access and drilling 8 geotech boreholes without incident and in full compliance of environmental and site safety requirements. The proposed new drilling works will be substantially the same as the works originally approved by Lithgow City Council, and as before, will result in minimal environmental impacts. Works will involve drilling up to 14 new boreholes, with 10 for the purpose of groundwater monitoring and 4 for additional geotechnical investigation. Complete and accurate geological data is critical to understanding if pumped hydro energy storage can be built using land and water assets owned by Energy Australia. This data will also be essential to enable us to plan an appropriate sustainable project that will have minimal impact on existing watercourses and dependent ecosystems. I also want to take a minute to provide specific feedback on incorrect claims the original drilling program caused water pollution in Farmers Creek. This issue was reported to us directly and by Lithgow City Council following a complaint. We investigated this complaint. We found that the appearance of cloudy water was not related to the geotechnical investigation program or any other works by Energy Australia in the vicinity of Lake Lyle. We've shared this information with Council and the community. Details of the outcome of our investigations are currently available on our Facebook page. I encourage those with further questions to reach out and speak with us. In closing, I want to thank Council for their consideration of this application. It is our preference to develop clean energy in the regions where we already operate. It also makes good sense to repurpose existing electricity infrastructure where we can. This reduces costs for consumers and conserves resources. This application to modify an existing DA is not the only opportunity for Council to influence the pumped hydro project. The planning process provides opportunity for all matters and concerns by individuals, community groups, regulators and residents to be heard and considered in a thoughtful and structured way. It is my hope that this DA can proceed to allow a better understanding for all interested stakeholders regarding the future development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Anybody else wishing to speak in public forum this evening? We'll move along then, thank you, to my mayoral minute. I'm calling on all councillors to support representations to the New South Wales Government in response to the highly damaging increase in the emergency services levy imposed on all councils without warning for the 2023-24 financial year. The emergency services levy is a cost imposed on councils and insurance policy holders to fund the emergency services budget in New South Wales. The majority is paid as part of the insurance premiums, with a further 11.7% funded by councils and 14.6% by the New South Wales Government. The ESL represents cost shifting at its worst, as it is imposed on councils without any mechanism for councils to recover costs. The levy increase for the state's 128 councils in 2023-24 amounts to almost $77 million, with the total cost imposed on the local government sector increasing from $143 million in the current financial year to $219 million next year. This represents a 53.1% increase, completely dwarfing the IPART baseline rate peg of 3.7% for 2023-24. Reporting suggests that the increase in costs this year reflects a 73% increase in the state emergency services budget and an 18.5% funding increase to Fire and Rescue New South Wales. The impact of these large increases on councils' financials will be particularly severe in 2023-24 as a result of the New South Wales Government deciding to scrap the subsidy for councillors' emergency services limited payments. For many councils, the unexpected cost hit will absorb almost all of their IPART approved rate rise for this year, and in some cases absorb more than 100%. This is placing local government budgets under enormous pressure as they struggle from combined impact of the pandemic, the extreme weather events, high inflation and wage increases. IPART approved rate rises are intended to compensate for the impacts of inflation and increases in council costs. Instead, the rate increase will have to be largely diverted to the significantly higher ESL payments this year. Lithgow Council will have no alternative except to cut budgets and services from July 2023. For Lithgow Council, the minimum increase in the ESL for 2023-24 is around $200,000, based on the current year's subsidy and not allowing an increase in the 2022-23 ESL invoice of 851 Ks. This amounts to 35% of the expected rate peg increase for 2023-24. Below is a summary table that is in front of the councillors tonight. There has been a 65% increase in the ESL over 4 years. The timing of this development is particularly challenging for councils as it comes so late in the council's budgeting cycle, well after IPART's rate determination for the coming financial year. All councils strongly support a well-funded emergency services sector and the critical contribution of emergency services workers and volunteers, many of whom are councillors and council staff. However, it is essential that these services be supported through an equitable, transparent and sustainable funding model. Local Government New South Wales has raised the serious concerns of the local government sector with the New South Wales Government and is seeking the support of councils across New South Wales in amplifying this advocacy. This Mayoral Minute recommends that Council call on the New South Wales Government to take immediate action, to restore the ESL subsidy, to decouple the ESL from the rate peg to enable councils to recover the full cost, and C, develop a fairer, more transparent and financially sustainable method of funding critically important emergency services. The Mayoral Minute also recommends that Council write to IPART advising of the financial sustainability impacts of the ESL. The recommendation you have in front of you, I'd like to put my Mayoral Minute. Thank you.
Move.
I understand you don't need a second, Mayor, but I'd like to speak to it when I get that opportunity.
Yes, certainly.
And I'd like to speak to it as well.
Yes, certainly. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. Look, this isn't the first time this has been brought before this chamber. We've been having this discussion on and off for several terms, and it's disappointing that we're having to advocate once again. I'm pleased that local government New South Wales has raised it with the New South Wales government. I'm pleased that they are getting the support of councils across New South Wales, because we need to get on the front foot. We need to be proactive. It's very important. It's going to adversely affect councils across New South Wales. I've been advised that it will be discussed at Country Mayors on Friday. I'm not sure if that's correct, but that's what I've heard. If the Mayor attends, and I understand that you may be, I'd be very much interested in what the outcome will be. So I'm hoping that something will be brought back. Mayor, if you could please.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Coleman. I will be attending that meeting.
Just to finish off, sorry, Mayor,
yes,
if I may,
certainly.
just to finish off, I'm pleased that we're engaging with the local state member. He has an opportunity to truly advocate on behalf of his constituency in this matter. He's no longer in government, but we did have this issue when he was in government, so he understands the background. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he brings to the Parliament. We need all the help we can get on this issue.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Goodwin.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. While researching this during the week, found several compelling arguments to support the notion that New South Wales Emergency Service Levy should not be passed on to local councils. And some of these points I'd like you to consider is one, an unfair burden on local councils. The primary purpose of local councils is to provide essential services and infrastructure at the community level. Imposing additional financial burdens such as the emergency service levy puts undue strain on an already limited budget. It's unfair to shift the responsibility of funding emergency services entirely onto local councils, as they have numerous other obligations to fulfil. It's also a state responsibility. Emergency services are a crucial function of the state government, responsible for ensuring public safety and managing emergencies. The state government should bear the primary responsibility for funding these services, since they have the authority and resources to coordinate emergency service response efforts effectively. Passing the burden onto local councils disregards the hierarchical division of responsibilities between the levels of government. Inequitable distribution. Local councils serve diverse communities with varying capacities and financial resources. Passing on the emergency service levy to councils exacerbates existing inequities, as some councils may struggle to meet financial demand, and while others may have greater resources at their disposal. This approach could lead to unequal access to emergency services and an inadequate distribution of resources across the community. A lack of local control. Local councils are better positioned to allocate resources based on specific needs and priorities of their communities. However, when they are burdened with funding emergency services, their ability to address local needs is constrained. Local decision making is crucial for effective governance and community empowerment, and passing on the levy undermines this principle. Potential service reductions. Local councils may be forced to make difficult choices if burdened with additional financial obligations. They may be compelled to reduce spending in other areas, such as infrastructure, community programs, or maintenance services, in order to cover the emergency services levy. This could result in a decline of the quality and ability of essential services that local communities rely on. And the last one is lack of accountability. The imposition of the emergency service levy on local councils may blur the lines of accountability. The state government should be held directly responsible for funding and ensuring the effectiveness of emergency services. When councils are tasked with funding these services, it becomes challenging to attribute responsibility accurately in cases of services and deficiencies or failures. The New South Wales Emergency Service Levy should not be passed on to local councils, and doing so places an unfair burden on councils. It undermines the state government responsibilities, exacerbates inequities, limits local decision making, potentially reduces essential services, and blurs accountability. It's vital to consider a fair and equitable approach to funding emergency services that aligns with the respective responsibilities of different levels of government.
Thank you, Councillor Goodwin. Anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor Marnie.
Thank you, Mayor Stafford. Just a question to start with. I'm just noting in the second paragraph we talk about without a mechanism for council to recover costs. I want to be clear or get a better understanding of what would be the mechanism that we're looking as a council to recover that cost.
Mr Gurney, thank you.
Through you, Mayor Statham. There has been proposals put out there, not by this council, but by the LG New South Wales, for example, to have a separate item on rates notices for the emergency services levy, but we would need approval to do that, to include it as a separate levy. In that case, it would be outside of the rate peg as well, so it is an option were the government to proceed.
Thank you. Okay, just following on from that, given that about 74% of it comes through insurance policies, that's the people out in our community taking out their insurances every year. I'm just concerned, given the pressures on people at the moment, if there's a cost recovery model that doesn't see the state government taking up the extra 11.7%, it's a big cost to absorb into the community. It's an additional cost. So I just need a bit of clarification about the mechanics of that, how that money is going to come back to us. If it's an additional levy on top of our rates, I think it's fair to imagine that there's quite a few people who would have some difficulty with that, given the contributions they make for their insurance already. I agree with both the speakers before. It is a cost that shouldn't be borne by council. Again, there's a pattern that's gone on for years. The highest increases happened a number of years ago. We continue to have high increasing costs on this matter. And where a particular small regional council that has an overexposure to natural disasters, so we already are covering the cost of the consequences of these. So having this additional cost imposed on us, again, I don't support, and I support the Mayor's initiative in taking this forward for a resolution, but I just need to be clear about that mechanism on that I'm not sure of and I'm somewhat concerned about.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. If nobody else is wishing to speak, I'll put the motion. Thank you.
I would actually.
Councillor Leslie, yes, certainly.
I just wanted to support Councillor Goodwin on his comments about cost shifting. And I hope you don't rule me out of order, because the last time I spoke about cost shifting, we had a Liberal government. But now that we've got a Labor government, I still maintain that cost shifting should not be occurring. And indeed, it's completely unreasonable that a small country council like Lithgow has to pay the burden of emergency services levy. It's the same complaint I had before when this matter's been raised before. It's the same complaint, but you've got councils in Sydney that have no impact from natural disasters. I mean, if you're in Hutters Hill, you're not worried about bushfires. You're not worried about flooding. It's just a wonderful place to live. But come out here, you've got those problems, and that's what local government's for. It should be an organisation across the state that tries to equalise the costs that are occurring on our communities, and the cost shifting that we're getting from governments just because they can is wrong, and it should stop.
I think we all agree with that, Councillor Leslie. I'll put my mayoral minute, thank you. Could have somebody move that, thank you. No. I'll put my mayoral minute. Thank you. Those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Pardon. Thank you, councillors. 9.1, notice of motion from Councillor Army Bryce, Seven Valleys Tourism Committee. Have somebody move that, thank you. Councillor Bryce. Have a seconder, thank you. Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Bryce.
This is just a motion to clean up the terms of reference for the committee. It was missed that the terms of reference says that the report goes back to the Economic Development Committee. It should read that it comes back to full council for noting. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Councillor O'Connor.
Yep, I agree with Councillor Almeida, because it should go directly to council. It's by far the best way. Put it out there.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against that? I'll put the motion or right of reply, Councillor.
I just want to note that we had our first tourism committee the other week, and it was a most positive committee meeting that I've been to. So I'm very pleased. Lots of good input from the community.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Anybody else wishing to speak? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Unanimous. Thank you. Notice of motion, Councillor Bryce, First Nations representatives on the S355 committee. Thank you.
I'll move it.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Have a seconder, thank you. Councillor McGee. Councillor Bryce.
This is to follow on from the voice and everything else that we're supporting, is to be able to give local Aboriginal parties, the RAPs, a position on council committees that they feel relevant to be on. It's pretty well self-explanatory.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Councillor McGee.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, but I think there's a lot more to it than just appointing someone. I think that there should be a lot more consultation involved. So I'd like to put in a change in point 1 if Councillor Bryce would be amenable to that. The change would be to refer this to an information session and invite the local RAPs to attend that information session with all councillors and staff, and basically give them details in that invitation of all of the committees that are available, and so that and a brief description of what those committees entail, so that they may make a decision themselves as to what they may or may not be interested in having representation on, and whether that representation would be, in an advisory capacity, or just what they see as their role in the future of this local government area. Because I think that, for us to say that these are the committees that they should be on is right back to square one of us telling them what's good for them. We need to really ask them openly and give them all the information up front so that they can let us know where we should be going with this. And I think that through an information session with all people represented, all of the RAP people in the area and ourselves, that I think we can really make something really constructive happen. So I'd just like that point 1 changed, if that's okay.
Thank you, Councillor McGee. Councillor Bryce, are you happy with that? Yes, all right. Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Martin.
Only briefly, because the motion speaks for itself, but I do concur with what you said, Councillor McGee. It's an opportunity to make decisions with the community, not for them. So I think that's a useful amendment. So, but overall, I think it's a good step forward.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Anyone else wishing to speak?
I just
Councillor
have a
Coleman?
question, if I may. I have no issues with the recommendation with the notice of motion. I have a question for administration. Does this mean that the committee itself will be increased by 1, or does this person actually replace who's going to be there, or does the committee expanded? So, for example, the Community Development Committee, we have, so many on it. Will it be expanded by 1 other than by an Indigenous representation, or how's it going to work? That's all I want to know.
Mr General Manager. Thank you, Councillor Coleman.
I think the recommendation is currently before the council and as amended and accepted by Councillor Bryce and McGee, would have the effect that the matter would go to an information session, and all of these things can be worked through. So the terms of reference and those committees can be worked through with the council, and that decision can then ultimately be returned to an ordinary meeting for all to be ratified.
So through you, Mayor, sorry if I may, so not really making a decision tonight anyway. Okay.
No, that's it.
Thank you, Mr General Manager. Right of reply, Councillor Bryce? No?
No, I'm right, thanks.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Councillor Leslie? Are you voting? Thank you, committee. Carried, thank you. Staff reports, people and services, 10.1.1, building and development. Could I have somebody move this,
I'd like
please?
to move this, please, if I
Thank you,
could.
Councillor Coleman. Thank you, Councillor Goodwin. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. Firstly, it seems as though Savile Park is truly becoming the place to be in Portland, and congratulations. It seems to be a bit of a heartbeat. It's really, families having access to the community barbecue areas are great. It's going to be next door to the pool and the swing set, opposite the foundation. Summertime will be wonderful. Hopefully, if this gets done before then, I'm assuming that it will do. I fully support this development.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Goodwin.
Yeah, Mayor Statham, a community barbecue at this location is sensible and appropriate for this area. It aligns perfectly with the Lithgow Community Participation Plan, and this plan allows the community to engage and participate in the planning and development processes of the LGA. This project shows me that the barbecue area is a perfectly suitable amenity for this area. The Portland community have had meaningful involvement in the planning and decision-making processes of this project, and by supporting this motion, it shows that we recognise and support the valuable contributions the community have made in shaping Portland.
Thank you, Councillor Goodwin. Any other speakers? Councillor McGee.
Yes, I'd just like to say that it's going to be a great asset for Portland. The Touch Football Association based right next door to the proposed barbecue area, is extremely busy. It'll be very well used, and with the Portland Tidy Towns play area just down the road from there, and all of the enhancements done by Tidy Towns in Portland, it's really coming along, and they worked really well with council. So, as Councillor Coleman said, it's becoming a real hub down there and a real asset to Portland and the Lithgow LGA. So congratulations to everyone. I think it's a fantastic thing.
Thank you, Councillor McGee. Councillor O'Connor.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to say how good the Portland Association, how proactive they are to go for a grant and get the grant, and now it's moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor Coleman, right of reply.
No, I'm happy for the motion to be put.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Unanimous. Thank you. 10.1. Yes, I do need a vision. Thank you. All those in favour say aye. Thank you. Unanimous. Thank you. The Economic Development Report, call in, Energy Australia. Could I have somebody please move this report?
Yes, I'll move that, as I did call it in.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Have a seconder, thank you.
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Leslie.
Yes. I called in this DA because I'm concerned about the care taken of the roads, walkways, cycleways around the site, and I wanted to ensure that these issues were raised when the DA is considered. For example, DA 07022 involved access from Girraween Drive, Marangaroo. And the first thing Energy Australia did when they began the project was to extensively modify the dirt track at the end of Girraween Drive for their purposes, making it unsuitable for safe cycling, running and even walking for older residents. There was no problem getting sufficient resources to do. I was wondering why this...
Just point of order. Aren't we talking about the... Sorry, point of order. Are we talking about the drill hole?
Point of order, Councillor.
Are we talking about the drill holes at Mount Piper? Or?
That's correct. Councillor Leslie, keep on track, thank you. We're here to talk about the Mount Piper borehole, thank you.
Yes, I'm talking about Energy Australia and DAs called in by Energy Australia and the processes they do when developing their. Is there any reason I don't get? Everyone else gets the. Thank you. I know even though former councillor Goodsell was concerned about why I didn't ever get the camera on me, but everyone else seems to. But I'll do it. Yes, Energy Australia is the people running who wants to put this DA in, and Energy Australia have we now know have a failure in the way they deal with the processes that they do. And I want to make sure that the problems that occurred in Girraween Drive, where the modifications made that particular site unsuitable for walking for elderly residents, that happened quite quickly. But when it came to restoring the site, that didn't happen at all, and it still hasn't happened. And so it's my opportunity to bring to Energy Australia, and they have representatives here tonight, to point out that they're failing in their responsibilities. So I've called in this DA in the hope that a similar lack of care does not happen.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Ms. Statham. My understanding is that we're only noting the DA. The recommendation states that we're calling it in for the site inspect to be investigate activities for proposed grid-scale battery energy storage system be noted. My understanding
that's correct.
It'll be coming back for debate.
That's the motion I move.
Yeah. I do have concerns about Girraween Drive, but I'll wait for it to come back for further debate.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Anyone else wishing to speak on this? Right of reply, Councillor Bryce.
I just don't
As a matter
understand.
of fact, I moved the motion.
Yeah.
Councillor Bryce is speaking.
Yes, but it can't be a right of reply because I moved the motion.
No, I said right of reply, and then Councillor Bryce put her hand up. You will get right of reply, Councillor Leslie.
I just don't, again, I don't understand why this has been brought in when it's wholly solely inside of Mount Piper. No roads outside would be affected. Girraween Drive is only not in this application, so I'm a bit confused about the whole thing.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Councillor Leslie, right of reply.
You're quite right, it is. But I didn't know that until I've heard the speakers tonight. I can't be expected to know these questions, without background. So I get a DA that's coming in, and I have to make a decision on it. So I do. I believe it won't. The delay is immaterial to the whole process, but it does give an opportunity for councillors and for the community to see this this process when it comes in. Just as I understand it, at the moment, I don't really have a problem with a battery on this site. I think it's probably a good thing. But I do need to see the process, and I'm happy to deal with it then and there.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Just quickly, sorry, no,
Right of reply has occurred, sorry. All those in favour say aye. Unanimous, thank you. There's no division. 10.1.1.3, call in Lake Lyle, Magpie Hollow Road, South Bowen Fells.
Happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Have a seconder, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. Look, firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the email I received from Virginia Burns and the offer for me to contact her, which I will do. I'm of the opinion that all state significant projects should be put in front of council. We are the first level of government. We are the closest level to the people. Residents should be given the opportunity to be heard, especially on this issue. I look forward to the debate when it comes back to council.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Leslie? Anyone else wishing to speak tonight? Right of reply, Councillor Coleman.
Happy for it to be put, Mayor.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Unanimous, thank you. People and Services Report. This is a late report. The Foundation's Portland Draft Development Control Plan. Could I have someone move this, please?
I'll move it.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Have a seconder, thank you.
Happy to second.
I think Councillor McGee was there. Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Bryce.
I had a look at this development when I was out at the business, Lithgow Chambers conference out there the other day, or I don't even know what it was called, a fair, whatever it was. Expo, that's it, thank you. It was a very well thought out plan with all different size blocks of land, all different sort of uses. I was pretty happy with the whole thing.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Councillor McGee.
Yes, I've been watching the foundations evolve for quite a few years now, and very exciting to see it get to this stage and to be progressing.
Thank you, Councillor McGee. Anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor Goodwin.
Yeah, Ms. Statham, the Portland Development Control Plan assists Lithgow Council planning by providing detailed standards, guidelines and criteria for development with specific areas. It ensures consistency, promotes community outcomes and addresses local challenges. It facilitates efficient planning processes and allows for flexibility. By incorporating these provisions, Lithgow can effectively manage and shape the development to align with the community's visions and goals, and this will be the next step for the developer and Lithgow Council, which is a good thing.
Thank you, Councillor Goodwin. Councillor Coleman.
Thanks, Mayor Statham. This has been in play since ordinary meeting of council 25th of June 2018. I mean, we've been watching this develop for many years, and I'm quite excited to see that it's coming to fruition. I mean, the foundations is just such an important part of Portland. It's actually an important part of Lithgow, and it's such an important part of transition. And I didn't get to the Business Expo because I was away, but I hear it was very successful, and I hope to see more things like that happening as well. But I'm really pleased to see this is in front. It is a late report. I would have liked more time to go through it, and hopefully in the future we'll get more time. But yeah, it's an exciting prospect.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor Marnie?
Excuse me. Like Councillor Coleman, I think it's an exciting initiative. I'd like to get my head into this with a little bit of notice. So an information session would have been of assistance as I'm talking to people in the community. I've had a very quick look at it. I'm pleased that we're seeing some diversity of housing stock again. There's some critical things also to be looking at how these subdivisions fit in with current targets with affordable housing with other levels of government. So firstly, I would have liked a little bit more information before it came to council, but I appreciate there's a lot on and happy to move it forward for public consultation at this stage.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Anyone else wishing to speak? If not, Councillor Bryce, right of reply. No dissent, right of reply. Thank you. All those in favour say aye. Carried. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I wonder if you could just excuse me until I can go and get the late reports, because I arrived late and I didn't get an opportunity to pick
Yes,
them up.
certainly,
But
Councillor.
I understand
Do
they're
you
in
want me
my...
to get them for you, Councillor Leslie, on closer?
Right, can I have somebody please move the insurance review of the insurance provider?
I'm happy to move that.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Seconder, thank you. Thank you, Councillor
I'll
Marnie.
second it.
Councillor Coleman?
Thanks, Mayor Statham. Look, staff have undertaken a comprehensive review and should be congratulated in the work involved. It's clear from the report that council should remain with statewide mutual. Statewide had indicated pricing is considerably lower than CRMS. It would cost council to change CRM, and if I'm reading correctly, it was determined that an additional staff member would have to be required if we did change to service what statewide is already providing. Is that correct? If I could get that question answered, please.
Mr Gurney, thank you.
Through you, Mayor Statham. The two options the council looked at, statewide and civic risk, are very different models, and the civic risk model requires a lot of work by the councils to participate in the mutual and to manage claims, and it was determined that we would need additional resourcing, staff resourcing to manage that.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, I think it's important that we stay with statewide mutual if that's the case, as per the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Thank you, Mr Gurney. Councillor Marnie?
Briefly, just mainly to reiterate what Councillor Coleman said, she's picked up on the same issues I have, so appreciate there's been quite a bit of investigation into this as far as its cost efficiency, so I'm happy to go with the staff's recommendation on this.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against? Right of reply, Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. Look, yeah, it would be negligent of us if the council's not continue with the provider that is providing the best value for council's insurance needs. So, yeah, I fully recommend that we remain with statewide mutual.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Cullen Sewer Scheme 10.2.2. Could I have somebody
I'll
please
move
move
it.
this? Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Have a seconder, thank you. Councillor O'Connor, thank you. Councillor Bryce.
This project is a very exciting one for Cullen. I drive past the works every single day, maybe 10 times a day. I'm glad to see that the loan was originally for 2 million, but it's dropped down to 1 million, with the rest of it being taken out from other funding, from other sources. So it's really good from the sewer fund. So I'm pleased, and I say it is progressing quite well, but I don't think it'll be finished this financial year, though. No, but it is progressing well, and the community have taken on it. They're really looking forward to it being in action.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Councillor Coleman. Oh, sorry, Councillor O'Connor.
Just to say I'm pleased to go with the recommendation of that loan.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against? Councillor Coleman.
Look, yeah, I just have concerns regarding borrowing money in this current financial climate, so I do have a question. So I understand from the report that it will be funded from the sewer fund revenue. Do we have any plans to allocate funding from Resource for Regions if successful in the future? Are we looking at that, or are we just, you know, this is the loan to finish off the project? And I just want to acknowledge the former Deputy Mayor Wayne McAndrew in regards to this project. This was one of his initiatives before he left council. So it's good to see it's coming to an end, but I am concerned about the financial climate that we're in.
Mr Gurney, thank you.
Through you, Mayor Statham. The project is already funded significantly from a grant, close to 5 million, which the 2 million is the remaining part of that. Once the loan is taken out, we would commence repayment, and that ensures that there's some intergenerational equity in the future users of the service are also paying some of the upfront capital costs as well. So there wouldn't be any plan to look for other grants to fund the loan repayments.
Thank you, Mr Gurney. Anyone else? Councillor Leslie?
Yes, I'm one of the few people who actually supports the idea of taking loans, especially over the last few years when interest rates were so low. They're not as low now, and I think it's probably a shame that we didn't get a loan on better conditions at the time. But loans for such major infrastructure developments as the Cullen Sewer schemes are good, because the people who will end up paying for it is the future. The people who actually will get the benefit of the infrastructure itself, and I think that the council does need to. Thank you. And I think that the council does need to consider, loans for examples such as this, and this is the perfect example for it. And so I support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against this? Councillor Bryce, right to reply?
No, I'm just glad to see this project nearly coming to an end, and people at Cullen being able to use it. It's been a long 10 years trying to get it there.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Unanimous, thank you. 10.2.3, Quarter 3 Budget Review. Can I have somebody move this, please?
Happy to second it.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie and Councillor Bryce. Councillor Marnie.
Mic on, in fact. Okay, I can hear myself, but other people probably don't want to. But anyway, here I am. I was just saying that it's a very good quality report. It's an honest and direct report, which I appreciate as a councillor. I'm sure there's people that know me who would be very pleased that I've been involved in 2 surpluses in such a short time. I'm not getting a mug printed, but we certainly appear to be back in the black, but we have got a significant underlying trend. Now, I think it's important that we understand the financial challenges that are in front of us, and in fact we've got a trend that's somewhat more, I won't say dire, but certainly more challenging, where we're sitting under in the negatives. So whilst the money coming in is certainly being of great benefit to lots of natural disaster recovery works, there still sits that challenge for us that I'm very pleased that our finance staff are staying completely focused on and cognizant of. So again, I just appreciate the report. It gives me a clear understanding. I only got one question, and I've avoided going down a whole series of rabbit holes, but can I have an explanation on Banners Lane funding redirected to natural disaster expenditure? I just want to be clear what's happening in that locality, please.
Mr Gurney. Or Mr Edgecombe.
Through you, Mayor, thank you for the question. It doesn't relate to any reduced expenditure. It just covers the fact that Bayners Lane was significantly disaster affected, and instead of covering the costs of that renewal through internal revenue, given the extent of the damage on top of which was existing, the funding of the project was covered by disaster recovery allocations.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Edgecombe, and thank you, Councillor Marnie. Anyone else wishing to speak on this? Councillor McGee?
Yeah, I'd just like to say it's a fantastic report, and congratulations on bringing about a surplus again. And yeah, congratulations to all the staff involved.
Thank you, Councillor McGee. Right of reply.
Point of order. Councillor Bryce actually seconded the motion. She should have had an option to speak first.
I apologise. Councillor Bryce?
I disagree. I just want to agree with Councillor Marnie. It's a very good report. It's very interesting. There is quite a bit of money though from the grants received that need to be spent, so that's inflated, I think, the numbers. There's $4.9 million upfront grant payments, so we need to be that mindful of that. But a good report. Thank you, Mr Gurney.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce, and thank you, Councillor McGee. Anyone else wishing to speak? Right of reply, Councillor Marnie?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll put the motion. Thank you. All those in favour say aye. Unanimous. Thank you. 10.2.4, proposal to enter a lease agreement with COC Limited.
I'm happy to move this. I do have a question.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman.
Also,
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Councillor Coleman?
I don't wish to speak to it. It's pretty clear that we're looking at, you know, a lease agreement with COC Limited. The only question I have is for the administration, Mayor, if I may, how are we going to govern in regards to noise pollution in that area? Because there are residents around that area, and we've had issues before with regarding this sort of thing in noise pollution. So I'm just wondering how that's going to work out.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Bryce? Well, if somebody can answer Councillor Bryce. Michael? Mr McGrath?
Through you, Mayor Statham. The normal way we would manage noise complaints would be to investigate and in some cases actually monitor the site at various times of the day, just to validate and collect evidence that there is actually nuisance noise occurring at the site both during hours of operation and outside of hours of operation.
Thank you, Mr McGrath. Councillor Bryce?
just further on Councillor Coleman's point, do they have a environmental licence on the site? Can anyone answer that?
Mr McGrath?
I'd have to check on what licences they do have, but up until now.
Because most EPL licences have noise monitoring on it, so it'd be interesting to see if they do have that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Anyone else wishing to speak on this? Councillor Marnie?
Thank you. I just got a query whether we needed to move it from community land to operational to have a lease. I don't know if I can ask that question, please. Further, Mayor.
Mr Gurney, thank you.
Through you, Mayor Statham. It is a proposal for a 12-month licence agreement. My understanding is that community land, we can have a lease up to 5 years without going to tender.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr Gurney. Thank you, Councillor
just
Marnie.
one other comment. Excuse me. I'll just have a drink of water, sorry. I'll be brief. Just wanted to note the submission. I just thought there was a very good submission in regard to the archaeological values around that area around the milk depot. So I'm assuming it probably leads on a little bit from what Councillor Bryce was talking to about environmental conditions and operating conditions. So could I ask that that be considered as part of any lease that's drawn up? And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Anyone else wishing to speak? Right of reply, Councillor Coleman.
Happy for the motion to be put.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Unanimous. Thank you. Carried. 10.3, policies and government. Contaminated land. Could I have somebody please move this? Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Have a seconder, thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Councillor Marnie.
I'm going to move fairly quickly off the bat to have my apologies. I was saying I wouldn't mind looking to move an amendment on this to defer it for a short period just to get an information session for the councillors. I'm concerned there's some good work done in the report and the review of the policy, but we have put a lot of things in front of the community which have brought to their attention some significant constraints to where they live and how their area is impacted, whether it's the flood risk mitigation plan. I've had a couple of representations of fairly significant contamination which was unknown to people of residential scale, as well as slightly larger scale, and also has impact on developers. Given that we have a long history of a range of industry, we can, sorry, I should have got a second.
I do require a seconder, Councillor Marnie.
I'm happy to second it. What's the amendment? That we're having it deferred?
Yeah.
A deferral.
In some cases, people have found themselves paying non-refundable building deposits only to then later learn that they've got a significant contamination issue on the land which probably exceeds the total cost of the build. So it's, yes, there's a buyer beware system out there that applies to a whole lot of liabilities under the Biosecurity Act, under the flood risk mitigation plan, under contaminated lands policy. For us as a long-term industrial-based landscape, we're now moving into those leftover portions of land, and I think this just needs a little bit more information for the councillors to explain it as we go into the community, with it being out for public comment. That's all.
Coleman, thank you.
Look, I'm happy for this to be deferred and go to information session. I think the more information we receive as councillors, the better. Knowledge is power.
Thank you. I'm going to put the motion, the amendment. Sorry. Councillor O'Connor.
Yes, I just want to say, what's the difference with the 149 certificate that we used to get? It was all on that about contamination, and now it's a S10.7 certificate, and that covers contamination if you're buying or selling. So what's the what's the difference with that and this report?
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Mr McGrath, could you assist with that? Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Statham. Yes, the planning certificates are the same as a 149 certificate. What's changed here is that we have a far better understanding of the contaminated sites within this LGA now, and that more information will be able to be provided to potential purchasers and existing owners of that land. But essentially, you're right, nothing has really changed. Those provisions would normally be provided in a 149, former 149 certificate. We've moved on to the next stage of having much better data and a contaminated land register. So we have, where a planning certificate may have been, may not have contained the information, with the new register that we have now and the data we have now, that information would be now be available to a prospective purchaser or a landowner.
Thank you, Mr McGrath. Anybody else? Councillor McGee?
Yeah, I think that I'd err on the side of caution with Councillor Marnie. I'd like an assurance that, you know, these things are available on an easy access basis. You know, that people can get this information and that it is readily available. And any other concerns that Councillor Marnie was raising just regarding those buyer beware ones, that they are covered. So
thank you, Councillor McGee. Anyone else wishing to speak? Right of reply, Councillor Marnie. Councillor Leslie?
No, thank you, Mayor. I was just going to add on the report here, legal and risk management implications, the last sentence there, the adoption of a contaminated land policy will clarify council's legal obligations and provide a clear policy position on how contamination risk will be managed into the future. It seems clear that the thrust of this motion is to clarify council's position, but I'm sort of agreeing with Councillor Marnie. It does seem to leave everybody else in limbo. You know, so where we don't know quite what's happening, but the council's okay. So I think as a community organisation representing the people, we do need to find out more.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Right of reply, Councillor Marnie.
I'm loath to make non-decisions, so I understand this creates work for staff. So I'm not doing it because I haven't taken the time to read what's there. I actually asked for this to be reviewed earlier on. I just think it's good if the councillors understand it. If it is a simple message, we can support that message as it goes out into the community. I just feel this one was one that probably should have come past us in an information session.
Right, I'll put the amendment. All those in favour of the amendment? Unanimous. The amendment now becomes the motion. Have somebody move the motion, thank you. Councillor Marnie. Is that just the amendment?
I think the amendment was actually the original.
No, it was an amendment.
Okay.
No, it was an amendment. Councillor Bryce? Yes, I'll put it again so the amendment becomes the motion. Thank you. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you.
There's the LCP, I think.
10.4 General Manager's Reports, Update a Lithgow Community Private, prepared by the General Manager, Mr Craig Butler. Can I have somebody move this, please?
Happy to move.
Happy to second.
Councillor Coleman?
Thanks, Mayor Statham. I'm glad that we're getting these reports every 2 months, I believe. That's correct. Yep, that's great. I note that in the report that Correspondence has been forwarded by the Mayor, your good self, to the newly appointed Minister for Health in April. It's a shame that we haven't got a response. Is that correct, I believe? Reading the report. It might be worthwhile sending correspondence to Michael Holland. He's the member for Bega. He's the Parliamentary Secretary for Health. He's also a practicing doctor himself, because I do have concerns not only about the private hospital per se, but we've also got issues with our MRI in regards to staffing, and we've got issues in regards to the sterilisation unit in Lithgow. I understand that that's meant to be closing in August. So I think we need to be advocating in regards to health services on a regular basis and sending as much correspondence as we can.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Bryce?
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Coleman. We really need to start advocating for better services out there. I can see that also that day surgery levels at Lithgow Community Practice have not yet returned to pre-COVID levels. This is impacting our local services, our people getting these day surgery. I agree that we need to be advocating a lot more with the whole of the government. Thank you.
The General Manager will just give a brief update, even since this has been done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I certainly agree that this is a significant and primary issue that we need to sustain the advocacy on, and to that extent, the Mayor and myself were invited to meet with the Board of the local health district recently, and we again advanced concerns that the service agreement has not yet been finalised, and we acknowledge it does have some complexity, but we argued that this council and the community is firmly behind Lithgow Community Private for the specialist medical services that it offers to this city. And we were hopeful of a service agreement being finalised shortly. We also again pushed the case for funding so that Lithgow Community Private could return to its pre-COVID operating conditions. And we don't think the ask is significant, and it's again, we reiterated that we firmly believe in Lithgow Community Private. We also raised the issue of the MRI. We were very pleased to hear that there has been an above expected uptake of the use of the MRI and referrals to it. We're really pleased for that, both local people and regionally. The local health district acknowledged that they are challenged to resource that, both by way of attracting the appropriate staff, but also in terms of getting long-term recurrent funding for the MRI. And we agreed to lend every support that we could, because there's not much use having an MRI unless it has recurrent funding. We're pleased to have it, and so the Mayor and I committed on behalf of the Council to advocate for that recurrent funding. We have just of late heard of an issue with the sterilisation unit and where that's conducted out of. It's only breaking news to us, and we're making representations to inquire more about that. There's also been the offer in the past for the local health district CEO to brief the council, and I think it's probably timely that we make that invitation for the CEO or her representative to brief the council shortly at an information session.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor Leslie?
I have no problem with the report, and it's good to get it. Just a small governance issue, if I may. As you know, I arrived late, so I didn't actually get my papers, late reports out of the drawer outside. But I did check, however, my business paper on docs, and these reports are not on docs. Now, you have spent some time and writing these out. It would not be unduly difficult to actually include these reports so that not only myself, if I'm late again, but anyone actually watching from outside is able to actually get them online themselves. And I would suggest that, for late reports, unless they're typed out 5 minutes before the meeting, that they should always be included into onto the online report. Well, I've
Thank you,
just checked
Councillor
here.
Leslie.
I've just checked here. It's not, but and if of course they have been there, and my report is outdated because I haven't done it updated for a while, then I apologise.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. The General Manager ought to speak to that. Thank you.
Only to make the commitment that as soon as the business papers are distributed, I think they are loaded onto Docs on Tap is our terminology for your iPads, and they're loaded onto the system so the public is able to find them. If that didn't occur on this occasion, I apologise, but we'll look into that and close the loop with Councillor Leslie straight after the meeting.
Thank you, the General Manager. Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Councillor Marnie.
Firstly, just to thank the Mayor and the General Manager for continuing to pursue this issue. I appreciate that you've made immediate contact with the incoming government, which is terrific. I think there's a challenge for us, and as I've said before, I think there's an opportunity there for us to be a pilot on how small rural communities around that 20,000 receive their health services. And what I'm hearing is terrific, that there's that uptake on the MRI, that we start to look at different models perhaps than the big centres and fatiguing people by sending them to Nepean for regular treatments or sending them out to Bathurst Orange when people don't have that mobility with transport. So I thank you both for continuing on that conversation.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Anyone else wishing to speak this evening? No? Right of reply, Councillor Coleman. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Carried, unanimous. Thank you. We're going to Council Committee reports now. 11.1 is the TALC Committee minutes of the 4th of May 2023. Have a mover, thank you.
I'm happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. A seconder, thank you.
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Councillor Coleman.
I only have a question, if I could. It states there Transport New South Wales winter weather VMS program. Can I get an explanation on what that means? Because, I don't understand that.
Mr Edgecombe, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. It simply refers to an awareness campaign that Transport for New South Wales run on a regular basis. Our roads get icy and quite dangerous during the winter. It's just a regular reminder to warn motorists to slow down and drive to conditions.
Councillor Coleman and Mr Edgecombe. Councillor Bryce? No. Anybody else? Councillor McGee?
Yes, I just think that it's a fantastic outcome for the Lithgow mobility aids, that we're doing all that we can to accommodate the elderly and infirm in the area and giving them access to their the service. I just think that this is the best that we could be hoping for at this stage. And I think with the reduction in the speed limit will be fantastic. This is all being applied for and just in train, but certainly going in the right direction. So very happy with the way that it's going. Thank you to everyone involved.
Thank you, Councillor McGee. Anyone else wishing to speak? Right of reply, Councillor.
That's not the way I read the TALC report. I read that the council's resolution that was forwarded to the TALC was defeated, was voted down unanimously, including with a vote from yourself, Madam Mayor.
Could you just please repeat that? Thank you, Councillor Leslie.
I have to find the report here.
Yeah. We'll ask Mr Edgecombe to give some clarity. Thank you, Councillor Leslie.
So at the last ordinary meeting of council, the council resolved to install a no parking or a 5-minute parking zone, 15-minute parking zone at the directly flat against the wall at the rear lane of the Lithgow mobility aids. TALC, being an advisory committee only, suggested that the council does not support the resolution previously moved and instead resolves that we would enter into a period of public consultation for 28 days to consider changing the lane to one way between Bridge Street and Bank Street, consistent with the flow of traffic on the remainder of the lane. But we would also consider the implementation of a shareway zone and speed reduction in the laneway to 10 kilometres an hour, and also reconfigure the existing car park to the rear of the courthouse to relocate the mobility parking spaces closer to the Lithgow mobility aids.
Thank you, Mr. Edgecombe. Anyone else wishing to speak? Right of reply, Councillor Coleman.
Thanks, Mayor Statham. Yeah, it states in the recommendation from TALC that TALC committee does not support the resolution adopted at the ordinary meeting of council held on the 27th of March 2023. I note that now it's going out to, as Mr. Edgecombe said, that to resolve the matter, that actions are currently happening a carry out public consultation for a period of 28 days, considering changing the laneway to one direction between Bridge Street through to Bank Street and section, and apply to Transport for New South Wales for a shareway zone and speed reduction on the laneway, and reconfigure the existing car park to reallocate mobility parking spaces closest to Lithgow mobility aid rear access, and a future report will be provided. So we're really nowhere at the moment because we still have to go through the consultation process. This has been put forward instead of the resolution because it was not supported, and then it will come back. So at the moment, my understanding of the TALC minutes is that we're in limbo and that we still have to wait for it to come back. Just clarification on that.
No,
Thank you,
Councillor Coleman, that's not right.
No?
Excuse me.
We got.
Excuse me, Councillor.
I'd just like a clarification, please, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Mr. Edgecombe, thank you.
Through you, Mayor Statham, it's not entirely correct. What's going to happen is the council will draft some plans to give the community understanding of the proposal as suggested by the TALC. We will enter a period of 28 days where the community can have their say regarding the proposal, particularly any businesses that might be impacted. And then at a time after those 28 days, with enough time to draft the report, the matter will be re-referred to the council with the proposed resolution, along with any community comments. In the TALC's view, this has been a matter that's been put a couple of times regarding the safety of that laneway itself. So in my personal view, it ticks a number of safety-related boxes, not just issues with parking and the Lithgow mobility aids. So I think it's a good resolution, a good recommendation, and I look forward to consulting with the community.
Thank you, Mr. Edgecombe.
I'm still on my right reply, which is where we're at in the debate. I'm at right reply.
Yes, that's
Thank
correct.
you, Mr. Edgecombe. I was very confused in regards to where we're at, but we're still... So my understanding is it will still come back after a 20-day period. We still have the option to debate it and consider it again. Thanks.
Put the motion. Thank you. All those in favour say aye. Unanimous. Thank you. 11.2, Crime Prevention Committee meetings of the 8th of May 2023.
Happy to move.
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman and Councillor Goodwin. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. Look, I actually missed this meeting, and that's a shame because I actually really enjoy this committee. It actually gives us a lot of detail on what's happening within the community. The reason I wanted to move it is what I actually wanted to thank the committee for moving a motion in regards to Jeff Smith. He recently passed away. He was not only a well-known member of the Lithgow community and a member of the Crime Prevention Committee for many years, he was also one of my friends. And I want to thank the committee for acknowledging him and putting this through. I understand that your good self moved the notice of motion and Councillor Goodwin seconded it from the minutes that I read. I want to thank you for doing that. And I just wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Goodwin.
Yeah, nothing from me to say, Miss.
If there's no dissent, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Thank you. Just to reiterate Councillor Coleman's statements, I also appreciate that the committee took time to acknowledge Jeff's contributions. I've known Jeff for quite some time, and he's someone who was very community focused, and he was a very fair and loyal person. I'm very thankful for the support and friendship he's provided to me over a long time, and also he was very much embedded in what he felt was good for Lithgow, and he was a champion of things that were going to better our community. So I thank the Mayor and Councillor Goodwin for acknowledging his service as part of the minutes as well. Thank you.
You're welcome, Councillor Marnie. Who spoke then? Anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor Coleman, right of reply? No, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Carried, thank you. 11.3, Finance Committee meeting the 9th of May 2023.
I'll move this.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce.
Yeah, I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Councillor Bryce?
As always, a very informative meeting, a great opportunity to ask questions, and great presentation. I'd like to thank Mr. Gurney for his presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Councillor Marnie?
I'll concur with what Councillor Bryce has said, agree on that. Just got a question for maybe the General Manager or the Council in general. Do we need to look at our membership, because we do at times have pressures getting a quorum, and it's a critical committee, and I, like everyone here, all has conflicting pressures. I'm just wondering whether we look at placing an alternate in to ensure that we get a quorum on all occasions. I know that the councillors are dedicated to their various committees, but I think we just need to address that matter.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Mr. Gurney's got a reply to your question. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Statham. There are a number of committees where the membership will need to be looked at with Councillor Goodsell's resignation. So I would think that a report would come to the next meeting of Council.
Thank you, Mr. Gurney. Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor Bryce, right of reply? No, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Carried, thank you. 11.4, Seven Valleys Tourism Committee, the 9th of May 2023. Could I have somebody move this, please?
I'll move this.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Have a seconder, thank you.
I'll second it.
Councillor Coleman. Councillor Bryce?
As I said earlier, this was our first meeting of this committee, and it was so positive. Like the Zigzag Railway presentation was amazing, and it opened up again. Then we had the press conference on the Saturday. The National Parks and Wildlife, the Garden of Stones Park, was a presentation was brought forward. It was great as well. All the presentations were very positive. The committee members were positive, and I walked away from that committee thinking that we were on the right track for tourism in Lithgow. I appreciate all the work that was done for this committee.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Councillor Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor Statham. I understand there's a lot of dynamic people on this committee, and I hear very good progress will occur because of the dynamics on that committee. I'd like to attend as an observer, so if I could please have the dates and the times, I'd truly appreciate that. I'm not on the committee, but I'd like to contribute in that form. So I think it's very worthwhile. It's important that we get this right because it is part of our future.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor McGee?
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear that it was a successful meeting, and I think it's definitely going in the right direction with the whole Seven Valleys tourism idea. But if they could just, if it could be noted that perhaps to get in touch with the Chamber of Commerce in Lithgow and just get a bit of, I don't know, cohesion regarding the whole tourism advertising, you know, after the high country ordeal out of Portland, you know, it's sending conflicting messages, and this early in the piece to have a united front would be a good thing. So if they could be involved in this committee somehow, extend an invitation or something, and just spread that positivity would be a great thing for everyone.
Thank you, Councillor McGee. Anybody else wishing to speak? Right of reply,
Yeah,
Councillor
no.
Bryce. Councillor Marnie.
Thank you. Just want to reiterate an element of what Councillor McGee said. I think the Chamber of Commerce are critical to the Tourism Committee. So certainly would like to see a presence there. We smaller and large chambers that exist in our region.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. I'll put Councillor Marnie. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Or right of reply. Would you like right of reply, Councillor Bryce? Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor McGee and Councillor Money, not just the Lithgow Chamber, but the Portland Chamber, because that is a big part of our tourism as well. Because we should be LGA inclusive, the whole LGA.
Thank you, Councillor Price. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Unanimous. A late report, Environmental Advisory Committee meeting of the 8th of February 2023. Could I have somebody move that report? Thank you, Councillor Marnie.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Councillor Marnie.
Like Councillor Bryce's comments about another committee, I thought this was a particularly productive meeting. I think it helped resolve a lot of issues that have been the committee have been working through for a couple of sessions, and I think there was a great deal of satisfaction that we moved through some points that we just needed to resolve. There was discussion about extending either the meeting frequency, increasing the meeting frequency, or extending the hours. There seemed to be some resistance about the hours, but there seemed to be agreement about increasing the frequency. For me, from a governance point of view, from time to time we'll find ourselves subject to potential non-compliance of environmental regulations or legislation. I think it's critical that we deal with these in a timely fashion. It leaves very little for the councillors on that committee to deal with, other than maybe to refer it directly to the ARIC committee or bring it back to the next council meeting as a notice of motion. I think the committees have been brought together to provide advice from experts in the community. We need to utilise that expertise, and as I said, I thought the last meeting was a very productive meeting on working through some challenging issues that had sat for a couple of meetings. So I appreciate everyone's efforts in that, and I thank Mr. McGrath for his assistance in moving that along as well. I think the community members came out of it feeling very happy with the outcome as well.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Councillor Bryce? No? Anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor Leslie?
Thank you, Ms. Statham. There was a letter received by the Environmental Advisory Committee about unauthorised plants being planted at the Hassans Walls car park. Now, my question is, have they been removed? And my other question is that anyone who watches Gardening Australia on Friday nights will know that when talking about planting in gardens, there's often a warning at the bottom of the screen for viewers to check local authorities in case such planting will be an environmental weed. Now that's good advice, but should anyone in Lithgow ring Lithgow Council? Does Lithgow Council have a list of such environmental weeds and a person who can advise on such inquiries?
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Mr. McGrath, thank you.
Through you, Mayor Statham. I'm not sure, Councillor, on the status of our list of environmental weeds, but it actually extends beyond that, because some of the discussion at the Environmental Advisory Committee centred around native plants being planted up there that are not endemic to the area, that could also pose a problem to the reserve. So, and your earlier question, I think, was whether those plants had been removed. One of the committee members with a lot of expertise has been up there to look at the plants, and I think some of those plants that would be potential weeds have been removed. And we also discussed the idea of putting some signage up there to try and educate the public, because I'm sure the person who planted those plants up there had the best of intentions. However, they may not have understood the risks associated with some of the planting.
Thank you, Mr.
And
McGrath.
so can I get an answer to the second question, which was, does Lithgow Council have such a list or a person who can advise on such inquiry? Should someone listen to Gardening Australia and ring Lithgow Council about, what they can do?
Mr. McGrath?
Through you, Mayor. I'm not sure who would be the most expert person. I mean, I think the people on the advisory committee would probably have more expertise than the administration staff at the moment. We do have a part-time land care person who would probably be the best bet. However, they are part-time and probably stretched for resources. However, we're looking very closely at additional resources in that natural resource management area who would be on top of this question, hopefully in the future.
Thank you, Mr. McGrath. Are you happy with that, Councillor Leslie?
Well, I don't think it's a particularly satisfying answer, but I will leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Sorry. Right of reply, Councillor Marnie. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be brief for the benefit of my colleagues. But just there was one point in the minutes we talked about surveillance cameras, and there was a bit of discussion around that. I think it's a bit more complex than when we put cameras into public spaces, particularly in bushland. So that was the only point in the report. I'd probably just take some time with establishing surveillance cameras within natural areas. So I wouldn't necessarily support that pathway. But otherwise, as I said, a good meeting. I think some of the answer perhaps to Councillor Leslie's question is, I think you're right in referring it to our land care officer, but also under the new Act, everything is captured under a priority weed structure, and so local priority weeds can often be now absorbed into the environmental weeds. So it might be something for the Upper Macquarie County Council to look at as well to help build some resources.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Thank you. Carried. Unanimous. Is that it? Is there one more? Oh. We'll move to business of great urgency now.
I have some.
Councillor Wright.
Oh, sorry. It was reported last week the Aboriginal Legal Services in New South Wales has frozen services in 13 centres in New South Wales. One of those centres being Lithgow. I would like, this is funded by the federal government, I would like a letter go out to our federal member, and ask him where this service is at and how do we unfreeze it. I know there's $21 million been allocated, more funding been allocated, but nationally we need to see how that's going to affect the services in Lithgow. The other thing I've to write to Andrew, to our federal member, LRCIP grants have been cut from the federal government in the budget. How will this impact on Lithgow council area? And the federal assistance grant has been dropped from 0.52 to 0.50, which goes against what the councils have been fighting for to go back to 1%. So this has all been in the latest, so can we please address this with Andrew G? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. I will accept both of those motions as a matter of great urgency. So can I have somebody move that we accept both those items, or will I go one by one? Happy to do one by one. The first one, all those in favour? Thank you. Carried. The second one, all those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Anybody else wishing to bring a business of great urgency? Councillor O'Connor?
It mightn't appear it's
I can put them, yes,
All,
they
all
were
we've
all.
decided at this stage is to accept that they are matters of great urgency. We haven't yet debated them.
You can debate them if you wish, certainly.
I would have thought the person who actually moved them would be interested in debating them.
Councillor Bryce?
Well, the first one is that we are freezing. That means we're not offering any more services in our Aboriginal legal services, which is quite daunting for our local people. Lithgow was picked as one of the 13 centres to be frozen in New South Wales, with 4 in Queensland. This is really important service to our locals. Do I debate both sides?
Thank you. Could I have somebody seconding Councillor Bryce? Thank you. Her report. Thank you, Councillor. I do. Councillor Goodwin. Thank you, Councillor Goodwin. Councillor Goodwin. Pardon? The same? Yes.
Nothing.
Anybody else wishing to speak to that?
I have a question in regards to, so can we get some clarification? So 13 services?
Sorry, 13 centres have been frozen.
And how did you come upon this information?
It was reported on the ABC News.
Can I get which centres they were?
I can't recall, but I think Lismore was another one. It was quite across the whole state. There was 13. I don't have those figures, but all I know is I noted Lithgow as one of them.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce.
So we know 2 of the 13, Lithgow and Lismore. Gosh, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Who seconded that? Oh, Councillor Goodwin. Councillor Goodwin, would you like to speak to that? Thank you. No. No. Anybody else wishing to speak to that?
Just so I'm clear on the action. So we're writing to the local federal member for
Yes.
for support to unfreeze them. I'm not quite sure what that constitutes, whether they've stopped funding temporarily or they've closed them. So, but either way, to give us clarity on what's happening with those services. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Marnie. Right of reply, Councillor Bryce?
I do wish to speak against the motion, if I may.
Yes, certainly.
I voted to allow the motion to carry, but clearly the motion has been ill prepared, ill researched. We really have no answer to the questions we're asking. It may be urgent, but it certainly should have been put to a notice of motion so that we could get one of Lithgow Council's substantive management comments, which we get. But until that, we're just buying a pig in a poke. It seems to me it's like a bit of political grandstanding, and we wouldn't want anything like that to happen in this council.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. I have accepted this as a matter of great urgency. All those in favour say aye. Thank you. Carried. Your second item, Councillor Bryce?
It's the LRCIP, which is the Local Roads Community Infrastructure Plans grants cut from the federal government. And the federal assistance grant dropped from 0.52 to 0.5, even though the joint councils of New South Wales have been pushing for 1%. Can we please look into this matter? That's all I want to do.
Could I have a seconder to Councillor Bryce's motion? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor McGee. Councillor McGee?
No, I just support the finding out more information about this. You know, if it was supposed to double and it's gone backwards, so we need to look into it.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak?
Sorry, a question again.
Councillor Marnie?
I'm seeing a two-part thing, and I'm 100% behind your question on the federal assistance grants. Like that's fairly critical. So no problem there. I'm noting we've got a named funding round. Has anything replaced it, or is? Because I'm conscious, I'd rather get information more broadly on what's the status of rural road-based funding from the federal government, because it's quite common, having dealt with grants over the last 30 years, that every single government pretty much changes brand names on projects to refresh them and look like there's something bigger and better and something new. So I sort of understand completely with the federal assistance grants, not so clear on the second one. I just need some clarity on that.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Mr Gurney will give a report on that. Thank you. I'll have a comment.
Through you, Mayor Statham. The Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Program has been running for about 4 years.
Yep.
It was announced by the last budget of the Liberal government that it would cease in probably 2 years from now,
Yep.
and the Labor government has stuck with that plan. It was an additional grant program, particularly through the COVID years, but there is no plan to replace that with anything else. Council still has Roads to Recovery, of course, which continues. However, this was an additional grant that also allowed not only roads but community infrastructure, of course, as well.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie and Mr Gurney. Anybody else wishing to speak to that? Thank you. Right of reply, Councillor Bryce. I'll put the matter. Thank you. I'll put the motion. Thank you. All those in favour say aye. Thank you. Carried. Anybody else wishing to speak? Sorry, Councillor O'Connor.
This may not be news of great urgency, but I believe it's Michael McGrath's last night.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to say that the council will be a lot poorer without him. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. I've just written down here last meeting for Mr McGrath. We'll surely miss you, Michael. You've been a great asset to our council. The General Manager valued your contribution, as did Mr Gurney and the other executive staff. And all the councillors, I think you've been a great asset to our council, and we surely will miss you, and we hope to get bored at home from time to time and come and do a week at a time with us. Very best wishes, Michael. We wish you very well for your retired life. Thank you. Yes, I will.
Just make a final comment, sorry.
Councillor Marnie.
Just with the items of great urgency,
yes.
I think if we could, they're all valuable things that have been brought forward, but I think they're better brought through. I tend to agree with Councillor Leslie as a notice of motion where we'll get some backgrounding and also some investigation. So whether the need to write to Andrew G tomorrow morning or whether next week or in fact 5 weeks is going to resolve those issues, I'm not sure. I think the legal services are more critical. I'd agree with that. But the other ones, I'm not sure that they wouldn't be better service, even if they come through the committee, to limit the reports coming back to council on. I think we just need to have that bit of information around exactly what we're going and advocating for.
I would usually agree with that, Councillor Marnie. However, the General Manager and I have meetings with ministers in Canberra and country mayors, as well as another meeting in Sydney. And it is an opportunity for us to try and source the best information we can and lobby for what we think we deserve here. It's like I would like to bring a notice of most business of great urgency as well for councils to think about the trains that have been parked in Lithgow, the brand new trains. This is insane. It was at the last government as well. It's insane. We need to make sure that we can lobby whilst we're away this weekend, if I can get some support for this. These trains are down there. They're just sitting there. They're costing millions of dollars every month. It's quite dreadful, and I think we need to make sure that we can get these trains back on the tracks as soon as possible. So if I could get a seconder to that, I'd be very happy.
Can we just go over that again? I'm a bit confused. So trains are sitting down in where?
Down near Inch Street. There's quite a few of them, mostly bright orange, and had lots of complaints about them being down there. They're sitting idle. They have been for a long time, Councillor Coleman. They're brand new. There's a situation which I'm not going to get political about this. We just need to get those trains moved down to where they're supposed to be or left in Lithgow for a service. Thank you.
I have no issue with that, but Paul Toole is still our local member.
Absolutely, and I've spoken to him about it, but I would like to get seconder so that we can get a meeting, a letter sent to the Minister that is appropriate to get some action with this.
So you're looking at the Minister for Transport. Is that
That's correct.
right? You
Thank
have
you,
no
Councillor
problem with
McGee. How does the council feel about that?
You can always put an option to them if they don't need them. They can become a train service between Lithgow and Portland.
I'll agree with that, Councillor Marnie.
And Capity, so yeah, so give them
They're
a couple
brand new.
options.
They're amazing.
As Mayor, you can call meetings with ministers at any time anyway. You are the mayor. It wouldn't be, you could contact Mr. Toole and he could arrange it, could he not?
That's correct, but if we can get a meeting, we're discussing this afternoon, if we can get a meeting with the Minister for Transport, we will do, but I wouldn't do that without the council's consent.
Well, seriously, this is yet another example of something that's ill-prepared and come up at the last minute. It really is grandstanding, this one. I mean, it's just nonsense. I'm not going to vote for this.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie, but I'll be lobbying for it anyway, but thank you anyway. I thought that tonight's meeting was a very good meeting. I'm very proud of the councillors tonight to be able to get through a meeting that I thought was very cohesive and very valuable. Thank you. Thank you. I'll close the meeting tonight at